Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to see such a large auditorium filled on the last day of exams. and I want to welcome you for this very special, distinguished lecture of the European Union Center of Excellence. My name is Yves Berthelot. I'm the Vice Provost in charge of Georgia Tech Lorraine, our French campus overseas. And I want to say that while GTL enables us to have a bit of America at the heart of Europe, it's true that here we also have a bit of Europe in Atlanta with the EU Center of Excellence. And it's headed by Vicky Birchfield, Professor Vicky Birchfield, who is heading this remarkable center. I'd like also to thank the Consul General of Belgium, Monsieur Benoit Standard, who is co-organizing with Vicky, with the center, this remarkable event. I will say that Georgia Tech has had, in my opinion, the foresight to recognize the importance of global education and research when it started its first international campus in France at GTL more than 20 years ago. It did so before it was actually fashionable to do so. Located in France, GTL has benefited, sometimes transformed the lives of as many as 2,500 students. This summer, for instance, we'll have 217 students going to GTL, and they will go and visit the European Union Parliament in Strasbourg. So it's really very exciting. Allow me just a little plug for GTL here, because I see so many students. I really want to encourage you to know that GTL is a campus that's open all year long. We have great programs in fall, in spring, and in summer. And it's a phenomenal way to discover Europe while you're getting a great education and interact with French students. So go ahead and check the website. But yes, indeed, the ties between Georgia Tech and Europe are very, very strong. Georgia Tech is very honored to welcome our distinguished speaker today, but I will let Professor Vicky Birchfield in the School of International Affairs here at Georgia Tech introduce our very special speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Berthelot. And yes, I would also like to congratulate all the students for showing up. We know this is a difficult time. We call it Dead Week, and that was originally meant to convey to the professors, this is a difficult time right before final exams, so please don't add any extra work. The students have a different interpretation of what this Dead Week means, so it's all the more special that we have so many of you here with us. Today is an extraordinary opportunity. I know this is the first time we've ever had a Vice President of the European Parliament on our campus, and probably in Atlanta and certainly in the Southeast. So we're really thrilled at this wonderful opportunity to welcome Madame Isabelle Durand on our campus. As Professor Berthelot mentioned, we have a European Union Center here. We are one of 10 centers that is funded by the European Commission, competitively selected, and we're happy to serve with the other 9 universities throughout the United States. Our mission is to promote greater understanding and awareness of what European integration is all about, what the role of the European Union in the world is, and the importance of the United States' relationship with the European Union. Today's title of Madame Durand's lecture is The European Union towards the United States with a question mark. So I don't want to delay inviting her to the podium. I know you've read her bio, but I'll just say a few words of introduction. She has had a fascinating political career, and you may have noticed that she began her career as a trained nurse, and so she's been in the medical profession. She's also been a teacher. She's served at all levels of politics, local elected municipal politics in Belgium. She's also served as a senator in the Belgian government. She's been a deputy minister and a minister for transportation in the Belgian government. She was recently elected for the first time to the European Parliament with the elections in 2009. She's a member of the Green political group, but and part of that stems from the fact that she had been Secretary General and co-president of the Ecolo Party, the French Green Party in Belgium. So she's been a very active member of the Green movement throughout her own national political career and now at the European level. And she has a mighty responsibility serving as one of the 14 presidents of the Vice President of the European Parliament. As I know you all, especially many of you students who've studied the European Union, the European Parliament is a fascinating body. It's the only directly elected transnational legislative body in the world, and it is the institution that represents the citizens of the European Union. And our job here today, or our mission as the European Union Center, is to try to understand, try to help explain what these institutions mean, how the European Union is transforming, in many ways, our political imagination. And I think the European Parliament is a particularly interesting institution because it's an institution in this very competitive, ever-globalizing world where European citizens have voice beyond their national borders. The European Parliament has been directly elected since 1979. It's a very exciting parliament these days. Madame Durand sits on the Budget Committee as well as the Tourism and Transport Committee. She's very busy. She's an advocate for sustainability, women's rights, social justice. Not only is she busy in her role as Vice President of the European Parliament, she writes very frequently. She contributes to leading national newspapers, and in fact, one just came out a few days ago where she's commenting on President Sarkozy and Prime Minister Berlusconi's new initiatives regarding immigration challenges and the Schengen Agreement. So I invite you to visit her blog, her Facebook, and read more about her. But now, without further ado, I would like to ask you to join me in a warm welcome for Madame Durand. Thank you.
Well, what an introduction. So first, okay, it's good? It's good, okay. So, after a so nice introduction, first of all, dear students, dear professor, I begin with a little history. When the two jetliner commercial airplanes crashed into the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center on 11th of September 2001, I was in the office of the American State Secretary for Transport in Washington, where I assisted to the New York terrorist attacks and then the Washington attacks live. I straight away realized that America, Europe, and the world history were going to take a dramatic turn and forever be changed. Witnessing the immediate reaction of deep shock and panic of the State Secretary in charge, and having not only seen on television or heard in the news, but lived, the event with thousands of Americans, I really felt and shared the experience of this city and country on this moment in stage of siege. For days, the American airspace remained closed, and I was confined to the Belgian consulate, waiting, leaving me with all the time in the world to ponder on the atrocity of these attacks and unable to imagine the impact they were going to have on the world order. When witnessing nature's frightening power of destruction through ravaging hurricanes, like yesterday in Alabama and in Georgia also, storms or crushing earthquakes, we all share the dismaying feeling of utter helplessness. But the destruction is even more dreadful, shocking, and sickening when it is deliberate, intentional, such as the vicious as perpetrated against the World Trade Center and what it symbolized on the 11th of September 2001. I at once knew that going beyond the thousands of deaths, this open aggression towards one of the big symbols of America and the world's economic system was much, much more than a one-shock terrorist attack, and that it would have major consequences. Although I didn't know what the exact impacts were going to be, and it was of absolute certainty to me that these impacts were going to carry over the long term. I felt that the world was the verge of tipping over, and it did. In March 2003, the USA-led coalition invaded Iraq in the name of the fight against terrorism, marking a radical change of policy towards the world and introducing a new doctrine, the preemptive action. It also marked the downward spiral of transatlantic relationships. By summer 2002, the EU and USA were seriously starting to diverge on strategy as regards to response to the 2001 terrorist attacks. although Europeans shared the grief and tragedy of Americans after 9/11, most Europeans didn't support the United States' decision to invade Iraq. It also created major political tension within the European Union between some of its biggest powers, especially between England and France, revealing a long existing tension between two of the main European leaders. France claimed it would veto to the US Iraqi invasion on a UN resolution if it came to war, whereas Britain decided to openly show its support to join US and join the coalition. Furthermore, although a striking majority of EU citizens declared themselves against the war in Iraq, 9 EU countries co-signed a letter in favor of the United States position on Iraq in the Wall Street Journal. This created a major rift within the EU and made EU leaders aware of the importance of confronting the issue of foreign policy in Europe, addressing the issue of foreign policy being a necessary condition for the EU's recognition as a major player in international relations, considering the current change of balance in international geopolitics and the rise of competing powers. In a completely different context, the democratic revolution that have been taking place recently in several Arab countries, such as Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia, which I'm sure you must have heard of, are once again dividing the United Union. Europeans defend a different position on the issue of military intervention in Libya and had difficulties reaching common ground in the UN Security Council. As a consequence, Mrs. Ashton, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, was not able to deliver a common position on that issue and speak in the name of all at the Council. And with good cause, the divide amongst Europeans was also related to the fact that during several centuries, a fair number of European governments supported some Northern African and Middle East governments and dictators. Firstly, for reasons related to oil needs. And secondly, because of their existing complicity to readmit immigrants dismissed for asylum in Europe. And the relation between those European governments and the dictators in North Africa is one of the reasons of the division between the European governments about the intervention in Libya. It is extremely hard to identify what the engaged democratic process will lead to on short or long term in Tunisia, Egypt, in Libya, and also in Bahrain and in Syria. What is, however, very likely, this process could be as decisive as 9/11 with regards to the relation between Europe and the United States on the one side and the Arab world on the other side. Although of a completely different nature, the recent nuclear crisis following the earthquake that struck Japan in March this year is not to remind me to the faculty a single event, such as the 9/11 attacks, to have impacts that go far beyond the short term and that have the power to greatly affect national and international politics, the economy of our foreign policies for years. The earthquake in Japan and the nuclear crisis that has derived from the earthquake have not only had a dramatic impact in terms of deaths and material destruction, but they also have and will have major impact on Japan's economy and financial situation and on its position in the international geopolitical balance. They also have brought back the nuclear question at the heart of current affairs. And in the context of the environmental and climate challenges ahead, and the will and necessity to base our economy on a more sustainable development system, I believe the debates revolving around the nuclear question are just at the earliest stage. I gave you those few examples of big worldwide current affairs events which loom large on the present and on the future of international relations to demonstrate the specificity of the EU in comparison to the US position. We are not, in Europe, a united, uniform bloc, but a multitude of states with their own cultures, language, 23 languages in Europe, in the European Parliament, language, perception of the world, or political tradition. It is crucial for Americans, and for you, especially for the young Americans, to avoid looking at Europe through American lenses. The European model is indefinable and has no equivalent in the world. It was born a result of a completely different history than the history of the United States. On the one hand, European history has been strongly marked and scarred by wars and conflict that have resulted in thousands of casualties on the European soil, especially during the 20th century. The reunification between Germany and France, the peace that has been reigning over Europe for just over 60 years, the reunification of Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall, all transformations that account for the difference between our mutual histories. On the other hand, the United States have formed through the successive integration of migrants. Since its very first steps in 1950 and the first European treaties in the aftermath after the Second World War, the European policies have been guided by an unprecedented political project, translated itself into a unique political system, neither a federation nor a confederation of states with its own institutions. We function totally differently. As you come to be aware of that and take into account, we Europeans have to do the same when we look at the United States of America. We have to force ourselves as Europeans not to put everything and everyone in the same box, what the European people and citizens do too much and too often. The US is such a rich country in terms of geographical, human, social, and political diversity. And just taking a look at some highly mediatized politicians such as President Obama, ex-Governor Schwarzenegger, Sarah Palin, former President Clinton or Carter, that reflect the diversity of the political view, lifestyle, tradition, and perception who exist in the United States. It would be greatly unfair to base our perception of the United States on our opinion of one or another public character or on one unpopular event or political position. And I can say you that in Europe, most European citizens do that, and against Sarah Palin or against, I don't know which president of the United States, they say, okay, all American people are in the same box. That's a big problem for us as Europeans, and I invite you to change your mind when you speak and we try to discover the functioning of Europe. It is also essential to keep in mind that the European Union is still very young. Very young, yes, 60 years is not very young for you, but 60 years is very young. If the United States were an adult, the European Union would still be a toddler in terms of historical scale. Indeed, there remains a lot to be done in many areas when it comes to European integration. As is mentioned before, for example, the divisions that designated Europeans as regard to the war in Iraq, different position of the different foreign policies issue, and show the necessity of member states to settle on some common foreign policy grounds. If it wanted to be regarded as a serious international interlocutor, evidently, how can we be taken seriously if we can't even agree amongst ourselves? That's the first condition. However, the Union has only been existing 60 years, the age of your grandparents, and on such short period of time, we have already achieved so much, probably more than most had ever deemed possible. So, if in some areas the EU still doesn't have much, or at least in my opinion, doesn't have enough to say, and if member states remain the main authority as regards to policies, in other areas, such for example as agricultural policies, the level of integration goes far beyond the existing one in some federal systems. To understand how the system works, and it is indeed a complex system, you have to grasp the difference between the intergovernmental method and communautaire method. I apologize for this methodological break, but I think that it's important, and I will be short. but it's important, necessary to understand the difference between the intergovernmental method and the communautaire method. The intergovernmental method is mostly characterized by three elements. First, member states share the right of initiative with the European Commission. Secondly, the European Parliament only has a limited consultative role. And last, the intergovernmental method is characterized by the fact that the Council voting rule is unanimity rather than qualified majority. This means that whenever one country votes against, for example, on one issue, a legislative initiative, this initiative is immediately brushed aside. To summarize, the intergovernmental method states the states play a central part and essentially base their preference and decision on their own interest, national interest, interest of your state. The community method, it's opposite. It is, for me, essential to promote the community method. She gives real power to the European institution. First of all, to the Commission, which has the exclusive right of initiative. And second, of all the European Parliament. We remind that the European Parliament is elected, directly elected by the European citizen, and the European Parliament, which formulate advice and amendment propositions. One of the major differences with the intergovernmental method also is that the voting rule at the Council of Ministers is the qualified majority rule, which encourages the member states to put their personal preferences aside and fight for overall well-being of the EU. In the community method, the member states truly give away a part of their sovereignty in favor of the Union. And that's important, that the member state can say, okay, this part of policy, I give my sovereignty to the European Union to decide for all the country together. The two methods are currently at use in the European Union, depending on the policy area. And since the Treaty of Lisbon, however, which was signed in December 2007, the community method applies to all areas where the European Union has its own competencies. Considering this and being aware that the EU is composed of 27 states with their own culture, language, etc., it is not hard to realize how complicated decision-making and reaching political consensus is in European Union. Take, for example, maritime policies. I was Minister of Transport in the past, and so I remember when we spoke about maritime policies, although of great interest to some countries as Greece or Italy, because the coast is very important, when you speak about maritime policies, Greece and Italy are very interested. But that is uninteresting and irrelevant for other countries, for example, Luxembourg or Austria, that have other priority to deal with, since they don't have any coastlines. So the discussion between Luxembourg, Austria, Greece, and Italy or Portugal about maritime policies is not so easy. Reaching a consensus on a specific issue is often hard, and it is not always easy to take big steps towards more European integration. But we have achieved and progressed a lot already: the single market, the euro, the common agricultural policies, advances in the direction of a common foreign policy, of a common European army. So it's the beginning, but it's not so unimportant. And it is even harder today, and harder today than in the past, to reach a European common interest decision, because the rise again of nationalistic and populist movement in every country and every national parliament in Europe. Election after election, the nationalistic and populist obtain more result. And it means that it will be difficult in the future to organize the common interest between the country together and not each country for herself. In order to face the challenges that we will encounter in the coming years, such as the consequence of the financial and economic crisis, the energy and climate change crisis, the tension related to the control of energy and primary resources, environmental refugees, Europe will have to take position and act in a unit matter, especially in regards to its measure towards climate change through an ambitious but practical energy policy. The financial crisis, which is strongly felt throughout the world, including in Europe, was born here in America with the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, following a speculation strategy on the reimbursements of mortgage by the bank's clients. This crisis, blast wave, is still being great and felt, and has pushed Europeans to begin to develop common rules of economic governance. It's only the beginning, because it was because of the crisis that we were forced to organize common rules on economic governance. But it's the beginning, and it's a good beginning. Europe's commitment to address this issue, to tackle climate change and find solutions to the predicted energy crisis, clearly won't be enough. A lot of hope had been relying to the Copenhagen conference. Remember, it's 2 years ago, which in terms of the making of a concrete plan of action to address climate and energy issue was a total deception for most. And by the European side, a lot of hope and a lot of was expected from President Obama, and many criticized the US failure to lead the way and help produce a concrete and ambitious plan, action and international agreement in terms of environmental challenges ahead. But perhaps, and I think that it was the case, it wasn't the best time for President Obama on this moment to be too audacious, as he had just shortly passed his health care reform, so it was not a good period for Obama to defend a real strong position in the Copenhagen conference. However, the next major climate discussion at international level, Rio 2012, could perhaps be a better horizon to reach a binding international agreement, as well as some practical and ambitious measures regarding our global energy policies in order to tackle climate change and control its economic, environmental, political, and human impacts. Climate change is not only an environmental challenge, but it also major economic stakes. In 2006, the economist Richard Stern published a review in which he stated that the sooner we act against climate change and put in place binding mitigation measures, the lower the cost would be. And it's now the moment to begin. You are familiar with Hurricane Katrina, which hit the southeastern coast of the United States in June 2005, killed hundreds and led to the displacement of thousands of Americans. What is sure is that such disaster will increase with the climate changing, increase in frequency and in intensity. And what happened perhaps yesterday in Alabama and other states in the United States, there is a relation between these events and climate change globally. So it's important, and I know that Europe can give the impression of lecturing the rest of the world and America on such issue. But we don't want to make a lesson to United States. Nobody likes to be lectured, that's right. But it is a time trial, and the reason why the EU is constantly pushing to take action is because it is aware that it cannot do much by itself, and that it needs to act hand in hand with the United States, I'm sure. We have to do together, to tackle together the climate change challenge. We, you and I, and especially you, young American, young Europeans, all over Europe, need to start acting now to ensure the durability and well-being of future generations and prevent them from having to carry the weight of our action and past decisions on their own. We recently had the honor to welcome Mr. Ulrich Beck at the European Parliament, who came to talk about the risk society. Modern society has built itself on principles and models that have engendered the multiplication of environmental, climate, financial, or economic risks. These risks are often unpredictable, unperceivable, and difficult to anticipate or to avoid. However, it is crucial that we act against the ones we can identify and can do something about, and all of you in this room share the responsibility of responding to those challenges. Every people in this room is a part of responsibility. So without you, we will simply not be able to face these challenges. So I hope that you will be able to do that in the future, in your future training, in your future career as citizen, and as your American citizen, but first of all, citizen of the world. And the world is for everybody, European, American, but all the other citizens. So I hope that we can discuss together now and try to explain the difference between United States and America, and try to have a better dialogue between European students, European politicians, but American students, American politicians, and to increase the capacity of dialogue between Europe and United States. So I thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you very much. We now have time for about 20 minutes or so for a question and answer. And we have two students on each side of the room, so if you'll just raise your hand and let me ask you to please try to be concise in posing your questions so it leaves plenty of time for the others to...
Yes, and please speak slowly, because you know that in the European Parliament we speak 23 languages. So it means that when we speak English, it's a Globish, it's a language, an English, special English. So please, with your accent of South America, please speak slowly so I can understand what you mean. Otherwise, it's nonsense.
Hi, thank you for the lecture. You mentioned global climate change in your speech quite a few times, and I'm curious, after I learned about how much power the EU has in setting, using its market power to set international trade standards, why doesn't the EU use that power to essentially force the US to be more compliant with global emissions goals and reduction?
A very good question. So on European level, there is the more sovereignty on European level than in national level. So for example, we decide together a plan, a European plan, decrease the emission, the CO2 emission from 20%, 20% of renewable energies. So it means that together we share between the member states the responsibilities to obtain this goal of decreasing of the emission of CO2. It means that the position of European representative in Copenhagen or in the international conference, we are perhaps sometimes lecturing, but we defend our program because we do it on European level. We try to do it. As ecologist, for me, it's not enough, but it's because I am ecologist. But as European, I think that it's a good step, a step in the good direction. It's not enough, but it's good that on European level we work together, and it's an obligation for the member state to work together on European level to decrease the emission of CO2. So we hope that in the future we can obtain such agreement on international level with United States, with India, with Brazil, with China. It's not so easy, but to obtain a real agreement and with obligation for all the states to decrease the emission, and with control and sanction, because if there is no control and no sanctions, the obligation of the contract, it's a moral contract, but it's not a real a reality on the ground. So we do it on the European level, and we try to demonstrate that it's possible to do that on international level.
Yeah, hi. I'm curious to know, what do you think is the biggest political impediment to a global agreement on climate change, in terms of which countries might be hindering the process and why?
The biggest question is the energy question, because we have to do a very important choice for the future, not only with emission of CO2, but especially about production of energy on a renewable way, and to define a real link between energy production and economic development. Because in our country, and especially after the financial and economic crisis, we have to create jobs, and we create more jobs, more economic activity, in the new technology, in the efficiency, effectiveness of the consumption of energy, because if you don't want to use, for example, nuclear power, nuclear energy for the future, it means that you have to change your way to move, your way to consume energy. The new technology can help us. It's not only a question of technology, it's a question of political decision. But I think that it's the most important challenge is the energy challenge in relation with the economic situation and the capacity to create job and a new activity in Europe. Because, for example, you take the sector of automobile. In Europe, I think that in the next 20 or 50 years, when the Chinese will begin with to produce automobile, the price and the capacity to produce it will be so interesting for the people in China that we have to change our way to produce. And for example, in Europe, we have not only to produce cars, but more train, airplane, etc., because the transportation we have to change in the future. Not only the car, but other way have to be developed. So it means that the energy question is a real most important question in relation with all the economic development of Europe, and I hope so in the future in link with the United States of America, because I'm sure that when USA will begin a real new Green Deal, you are so strong when you want something on American level that it will change not the world, but perhaps it changed the world. If United States decide to engage a real green revolution, I think that perhaps the European citizens will be, it will be difficult for the European to have the same level than the USA. Because I'm sure that when you do something, you do it very well. But it's a question of will, of political will on USA level to decide, okay, the green revolution, it's to change energy, to change transportation, to change the way to produce, to change some way of life. And it don't mean that we will live in dark. That's absolutely stupid. Some people try to demonstrate that ecologists are crazy and they want to go in the past. Absolutely not. I think that the future is a green future, absolutely. And that's the challenge for the next, that's your challenge.
Madame Durand, thank you for a fascinating lecture. The great question that Americans used to ask about Europe was, who do they call in the event of a crisis? Who speaks for Europe? And of course, since that question was asked, we now have a permanent president of the European Council, a compatriot of yours, and we've a president, obviously, of the European Commission, a president of the European Parliament. But do you think that that question has been answered in terms of who speaks for Europe? And if not, how do you think Europe might answer that question?
That's a big problem for us as Europeans, because if I can decide, I prefer, and it was the question, I prefer election of a president of Europe. It's so easy. One people, one woman, why not? And it will be easier to see and to one interlocutor. But, so I explained, the European construction is so different. It's a puzzle with different countries, with different interests, with different cultures. And it's not finished, because perhaps tomorrow other new country will be invited to come in Europe. I think, for example, for Croatia, it will be member Iceland, and perhaps why not in the future Turkey? I don't know. So it means that the European construction is not a block. It's a specific construction. So we have today four people who speak for Europe. The President of the Parliament, my colleague, President Buzek. Mrs. Ashton as High Representative for Foreign Affairs. Mr. Van Rompuy as President of Council, and Mr. Barroso as President of the Commission. So it's a little bit, if Obama wants to speak, he speaks with 1, 2, 3, 4 more. And each of the four say, I am the representative of Europe. So Mr. Obama, but I'm sure that he knows that, but you have to know that no one of the four is the representative of Europe. It's a collective. It's a little bit difficult because the point of view are sometimes a little bit different. But I hope that in the future, the sovereignty on European level will increase, and perhaps why not to have, for example, their direct election for the president of the Commission. It will be a next step, interesting and necessary, I think. So I said in Europe, I don't know if you know that, but in each election, in France, in Germany, in Finland, in Hungary, in Poland, in all the country, it's not the Euro optimist who win the election. It's more the Eurosceptic who win the election. It means that the enthusiasm of the European citizen is not so big. I think that some citizens keep a hope in the European project, but the campaign, the television, the show on television with people who try to be popular, to speak as everybody speak, and they have no courage to explain that some decisions are necessary and perhaps, and even if they are difficult. So the populism and the nationalistic, so each country on its own interest, is now the trend in Europe. So it means that it will not be so easy to change what you ask, what I want, more integration. But I'm sure that it's important that people in the European Parliament and even people in the United States, why not, push the European in the direction of more integration, because it's the only way to have a real place, a real weight in the international discussion. However, we will continue with some, and I spoke about the four, but there is Mr. Sarkozy, Mr. Berlusconi, and tomorrow, I don't know, in the big countries, not in Belgium, because Belgium is a very little country, but in some big countries in Europe, the president of those countries want to speak alone with Obama or with China. And so Obama, he received the four, or one of the four, but he speaks also with Sarkozy, with Berlusconi, etc. So it's not so easy to say to Sarkozy, for example, no, you are represented by Mrs. Ashton. What? I'm not, Mrs. Ashton don't represent me as Sarkozy. So we have a lot of efforts in the future to go to more integration, but it's absolutely necessary. Yes, enfin, yes, it's true.
Your view that more integration in Europe is not, as you point out from the elections in national parliaments, a universally held agreement. As a matter of fact, there's an article in this new issue of Foreign Affairs by Henry Farrell from the Woodrow Wilson Institute, International Institute, and John Quiggin from Australia, and they point out the EU has never had much popular legitimacy. Many voters have gone along with it so far only out of the belief that their politicians knew best. Today they are more suspicious, and if they come to think that further integration is causing more economic hardship, their suspicion could harden into bitterness or worse. The people of Europe, when given a chance, have voted for less European integration. The proposed constitution, and the only countries that got to vote on it, France and the Netherlands, voted it down. So the political elites decided they wouldn't give the people a chance to vote anymore, and the Lisbon Treaty was submitted not to the people. There was no popular referendums except in one country, Ireland, which voted it down the first time, and then under what was referred to as withering pressure and more or less bribes voted in favor of it. Why do the political elites that are in so much favor of further European integration not listen to the people? The polls show that the Lisbon Treaty would have been voted down again in France and the Netherlands. Why is the voice of the people not listened to when you go forward with additional integration, especially when you adopt a document as the Lisbon Treaty that's 3 times longer than the novel War and Peace.
So, why do we not listen the European citizens? Yes, we listen. We listen because they vote every 5 years for the European parliaments. And so, yes, we listen, but the referendum in Netherlands or in France about the Lisbon Treaty, I'm not sure that the answer of the people, of the citizen, was an answer of the about the Lisbon Treaty. It was more a domestic response to a European question. But I'm sure that the participation and of the citizens have to be increased. And for example, it's important today that we can organize a transnational list for the European election. It's important. If I am elected in Belgium, so for me, if it's not necessary to be here, but it's not necessary to be in France or in Germany or in Finland or I don't know where, because never the citizen of Finland or France or Germany will vote for me. Only the Belgian citizen will vote for me. So I speak to the Belgian. Why the European project is so bad perceived by the people? Because a minister, a Belgian minister or a French minister, when he decides about a law, if it is a law implementation of European law, if the law is good for him or he thinks that it's good for the country, he say it's my law. But it's the law. If the law is not so good, or as the minister think that this law is not so good for the country, but is obliged to implement it in the national law, he say, it's not me, it's Europe. So it means that for the European citizens, all the bad rules, it's the responsibility of Europe, and all the good rules, it's the responsibility of the national government. So if you present Europe on this way, it means that never the European citizens will say, okay, it's a good decision, and we will support more integration, European integration. So we have to speak about Europe differently, and on national level, I think that we have to change the way to speak about Europe, because when you speak about Europe on national level, you say always bad Europe, and good national decision. However, the climate change and economic and social crisis, it can be only resolved on the European level. It's impossible today to find solution on climate change question on Belgian level. It's crazy. It's like a confetti. So it means that we have to do together. It's an obligation. We have to do that together. Why? Why? Because how is it possible in the world of the 21st century with globalization? How is it possible to defend that a little country with 5 million inhabitants can defend its point of view in the international discussion? It's impossible. And the competition between the countries and economic competition, etc., is so important that we have to do together. And if we have peace in Europe for 60 years, it's because of this collaboration and cooperation and integration on European level. So I am absolutely convinced that it's necessary to do more and to speak more with the people, yes, to explain what is the European project.
Do you think that the political elites rule Europe? Do you see Europe as a confrontation between the people of Europe and the political elites of Europe?
It's the case on national level. It's also the case, because when you see the election on national level, la confiance, the confidence between citizens and the political representatives is not so good on national level. So it's not only a question of European question. It's a national question, even a regional question. In Europe, there is no obligation to vote. It's free vote. So there is election, people go vote or not. It's the case in USA also, I think. It means that, for example, in France, in the last presidential election, only 40% of people are going to vote. 40%. It means that the people are elected with not so an important amount of citizens. So the confidence in the political level is bad everywhere in the world. And in Africa also, even if it is so different. So I think that the confidence between the citizen and the political representative is in big difficulty because the crisis, the economic crisis, the power of the private sector, the financial sector is so big, the lobby are so important that the people think, oh, why I go to vote for representative? They can do nothing. If there is a problem, it's the private sector and the financial sector which win. So there is a democratic question, not question, but a democratic deficit in relationship between the elected people and the citizens. And on European level, it's more difficult because what I explained, when you are elected on European level, you don't speak with a big part of the European citizens because they don't vote for you. On national level, they vote for you. So it means that if you want to be re-elected, you try to speak with your citizens because you want to say to her, okay, vote for me on the next election. On European level, it's a little bit different. So I think that the democratic question is a question for everybody and not only for the European level.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm just going to interject here. There are a lot of students who also want to ask questions. This is a stimulating discussion, and I'm sure Madame Durand appreciates it. But I would like to cede the floor to the next question, and we'll have time during the reception to continue this discussion. Thank you.
Sorry. I was curious about your opinion regarding the current... Do you hear me?
Voilà.
Yeah, okay. So I was curious about your opinion regarding the current immigration issue in Europe, especially since the French statement on Schengen. So I would like to know if you could talk a little bit about it. Thanks.
Yes, so that's an important question because the statement of Sarkozy and Berlusconi, they want to change Schengen. Why do they want to change Schengen? Because of the arrival of some people, I think that it's 20,000 people from Tunisia who arrive in Italy. And why they arrive in Italy? Because of the situation in Tunisia. Alors you will say, oh, in Tunisia, it begins with democracy, the dictator is no more there, so there is a change for the young people in Tunisia. That's true. But before the moment of those people can have a job and a good situation, they have to wait some years. So it's normal in this situation in the Middle East and in North Africa, it's normal that many people try to come to Europe, and especially because the readmission agreement between Berlusconi and Ben Ali in Tunisia don't exist. It don't exist because there is no more government and Ben Ali is no more there. So many people arrive in Italy, but they arrive in Italy and Berlusconi say, okay, I don't want to keep those Tunisian people in my country. So it's important on European level to share the responsibility and the capacity to welcome those people, and especially by the temporary protection. It exists in the rules on European level to organize temporary protection for people, and it's the case for the Tunisian or the Libyan or the Egyptian, because the situation in their own country is very specific and very special. We don't know how will the evolution in the transition in those countries. But Berlusconi want to cacher the domestic situation, to hide the situation on other affairs and other problems on domestic level. Sarkozy, he have election in France next year, and the extreme rights use the migrant question as a topic of campaign. So Sarkozy want to show, I am against migrants, migrants is dangerous, etc. So each country try to say, no, I don't want migrants in my home. keep it in Italy, keep it in Portugal, keep it in Spain. So I am absolutely sure that we have to organize on European level a real common responsibility, not only to organize the protection of Europe against the migrants, but a real capacity to welcome the people and to organize a real process of migration. And when my option is that the people have to, if it's possible, to come in Europe and to go back to their country, and to it's a way to change the mind, because today the migrants try to go to Europe and they stay in Europe even in clandestinity or as illegal, but they cannot go back, because if they go back, it's impossible to go back in Europe after. So we have to change the rules, but it's very sensitive and difficult debate on European level, because the migrant, and especially the Islamic migrant, because it's especially those migrants who are the problem for some people. The situation is so difficult today to have a real debate, and with the nationalistic again, and the capacity of the people to say, no, I want to organize a rule for my country and I don't want European rules, it will not be easy. But I'm sure that it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, we are in total schizophrenia. We say, on one hand, we support the revolution, the transition, in the democratic transition in those countries, but we don't want to pay the price, and the price is that some people try to come in Europe during the transition period. It's normal. So you cannot say, I support the democratic transition, but I don't want the disadvantage. So you have to be a little bit more coherent.
I have a question about the transatlantic relationship. How do you see the United States and Europe moving forward? Do you see us cooperating together as we have for the last 50 years, or do you see us drifting somewhat apart?
I didn't understood. On which issue, the cooperation?
Just in general.
In general, okay. So I'm sure that, so I said on climate change question, I'm sure that there is a necessity to collaborate between United States and Europe, and not as Europe who lecturing the United States, and you are that guy, etc. No, that's absolutely a nonsense. But I'm sure that we can together, as European, because we begin before to organize the way to organize the decrease of emission, etc. And with United States, because you, as America, you have a big capacity to organize on high level the greening of the economy. So I'm sure that we have to do together this challenge. It's absolutely necessary. And if we are together, United States and Europe, it's a big power, a big weight on the international level. That's one thing. Another thing, more difficult, is the question of terrorism. Because, you know, after 11 September, I understand that the measure against terrorism, and not only the question of Iraq, but all the rules about a fight against terrorism is very difficult because you have to defend human rights globally. And where do you stop with human rights when you want to protect the people against terrorism? That's a difficult question, but I'm sure that we have to discuss together on this issue, even if it's difficult, because the experience of United States after 11 September is so high, so huge, so huge that it's not so easy. But I think that it's an important thing, and I think that if we try to speak together and to collaborate on these two issues, human rights on one side and climate change on the other, it's a nice challenge for the next 20 years.
Recently, after the disaster in Japan, nuclear energy has become something that people are very scared of. It's been reawakened as a fear. What role does the European Union take in ensuring the responsible use of nuclear energy in all of its nation states?
There is no unique position of European Union on this issue, because some country like France, for example, is involved for 80% in nuclear energy. In some other country, like Austria, for example, absolutely no nuclear energy. So it means that we are in different position between the different countries. So there is no position after Fukushima to say, okay, we stop or we try to organize a transition in the direction of new energy. So there is no common position. And I think that there is more defender of nuclear energy on European level, because they think that it's a good technology and a good response to the climate change issue, because there is less CO2 with the nuclear energy. I think that it's not the good debate and not the good way to discuss on this issue, because so said, and I propose you to take note what say Ulrich Beck on this issue. So I said, because it's very interesting. He explained that, for example, nuclear energy is a risk, a so big risk. It's a technology of the past, of the year 60s. It's not the technology for the future. The technology for the future, it's the renewable energy, with wind, with sun, with all the new technology. And I speak in a university very specialized on this issue. So I invite you to be the real pioneers on this issue, because I think that we can do better and better in the next year with renewable energies. And we can demonstrate that the nuclear energy is no more necessary for the future. We have to avoid, and especially the waste. But the problem of nuclear energy is the waste. The nuclear waste are very dangerous for years and years after us. So it means that the technology and the credibility of renewable energy are very, very, very important to show that the nuclear energy is no more necessary. And I add that the link between the civil nuclear energy and the military energy, nuclear energy, is not so big. It means that, for example, when you speak with Iran about this question, yes, they say that it's only for civil question that they defend the possibility to have nuclear power in Iran. But with Ahmadinejad, I'm not sure that it's a good way to give him the possibility to develop nuclear energy, because I'm sure, I don't know, but I have the conviction that it's possible that tomorrow he develop nuclear military power, and it's very dangerous for the world. So I think that it's technology of the past. We have in the next generation to be convinced that we can live without nuclear energy, with alternative. Alternative exist, and especially with efficiency, developing of efficiency in energy. That's the better way to show that it's possible to live without nuclear energy. It will be better for us and for the next generation. So can I say last element for on your question against, if I can say, nuclear energy? The third reason to defend, to go out of the nuclear energy, is the question of centralization. Nuclear energy is produced by a centralized way, in a plant, in one place. It means that the price of energy is in the hands of a very restricted number of people. If you develop renewable energy and solar energy, wind energy, it's decentralization in the production. It means that there is more power for the citizen, for the consumers, on the price and on the quality of the energy than in the centralized production with the nuclear system. So I think that it's a third reason. The decentralization of the production is better for the citizen and for the consumer and for the price.
Madame Duran, I know of the good work of your office in Washington and in many other countries, but the role is primarily advisory, informational, and I wonder if you want to project a stronger, united image of Europe, whether these offices will ever get the responsibility to do more than advisory services or informational services.
You speak about the office of the European Parliament in Washington.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I agree with you. If we can do more than only recommendation, but more develop a better image of Europe, yes, I take note of your suggestion to increase the capacity of this office to speak about Europe. I will say it to my colleagues. But it's good. It exists, so it's a good instrument. You have to be used from the better way.
Thank you. Recently, the European Monetary Union has been under quite a bit of stress, with the European Central Bank being forced to provide assistance to Greece, Ireland, Portugal, possibly Spain. What are your thoughts on the idea of splitting the euro into two tiers, one for northern bloc of states and one for southern bloc of states?
I didn't understand the last part. When I think about
the idea of splitting the euro into two tiers.
Ah, okay. Whoa. So, no. I want to keep the euro as it exists now, but the crisis demonstrates the absolute necessity to organize not only a common money, but a common economic governance. It was not the case before. It began to be the case now. It began. And we decide, it was a tough decision, but it was the case, to help and to support Greece, to help and to support Ireland, and perhaps tomorrow Portugal, to see to the restructuration of the debt in those countries. So it's very important to go further than now on the economic harmonization between us. But I'm absolutely against a different zone in Europe. I think that the solidarity between the Eurozone have to be maintained and reinforced. It means that we have to take some difficult decision, and some difficult decision regarding the nationalistic discussion in the member states, because why Germany and Mrs. Merkel in the beginning said, no, we don't want to help Greece because it's the responsibility of the Greek politician. It's a part of the truth. But on one moment, if you want to save the unity, you have to be in the solidarity, but with responsibility. It means that we have to change the pact of competitivity between us. So we begin. I think that the last decision are not so good because they don't speak about taxes. So they speak only about public expenditures, but not about fiscality and taxes. And the harmonization about taxes is so important if we want to have a real economic governance. So it's only the first step. But I'm sure that we have to do this way further in economic governance in the Eurozone. But if we change and if we say, okay, there is a zone with Euro 1 and Euro 2 of big euro and little euro, it's not a good way. So I prefer a reinforcement of the rules and the economic rules between us. And tomorrow, with the other, they will enter in the Eurozone because it will be the case step by step. Slovenia is now inside, but other countries will follow. So it's difficult, but it's necessary because it's one of the criteria of the integration of European level. If you are not able to do that, it's a really big question for the European institutions. So it's a difficult job, but I think that it's absolutely necessary to keep the integration and to go further in the rules, the common rules on economic level.